I was a bartender at a very old pub in Oxford, England. An American couple came in, and the husband, looking at the centuries-old wooden beams and stone floor, said to me, "This is a fantastic theme pub. Your company did a great job." Which franchise is this? It's so much more authentic than the English pubs we have in the malls back home. I had to explain that it wasn't a theme pub, it was just a pub, an actual 400-year-old pub. He looked at me with disbelief and said, "Really? So like no corporate headquarters or anything? That seems like a terrible business model." My friend was a tour guide at the Vatican. He was leading a group through the Sistine Chapel, explaining the history and meaning of Michelangelo's frescoes. An American woman in the group raised her hand and asked in all seriousness, "This is beautiful, but is there a version without all the nudity? I want to show pictures to my church group back in Alabama, but this is just too much. Did Michelangelo paint a more family-friendly option?" My friend had to politely explain that there was no PG-rated version of one of the world's greatest artistic masterpieces. I worked for a car rental company at the airport in Dublin, Ireland. An American man came to the counter to pick up his reserved car. I handed him the keys and pointed him to the vehicle. He came back a few minutes later, looking furious. "The car you gave me is defective," he said. "Someone put the steering wheel on the wrong side. I can't drive this. I need a proper American car, a left-hand drive." I had to spend the next 10 minutes explaining that all cars in Ireland are right-hand drive because we drive on the left side of the road. He accused us of being deliberately difficult. I was on a train in Japan, sitting opposite an American family. The train was immaculate, silent, and arrived at the station at the exact second it was scheduled to. The father shook his head and said to his wife, "This is all very efficient, but it's a little creepy. There's no soul." In America, our trains are a bit dirty and always late, but that's because we value freedom over rigid schedules. It's the chaos of democracy, and I prefer it. He said it with such patriotic pride, as if a failing infrastructure was a sign of a superior culture. While working at a hotel in Paris, a guest from Texas called me at the front desk. He was irate. "I've been trying to watch Fox News for an hour, and I can't find it on the TV. All your channels are in French. This is a major international city. You should have basic American channels. How am I supposed to know what's going on in the world?" I tried to explain he could find news on BBC or CNN International, but he wasn't having it. "That's not real news," he insisted. "That's foreign propaganda." I was studying in South Africa. An American classmate asked a local student from the Zulu tribe about her culture. The conversation was going well until the American asked, "So what do you guys do for Thanksgiving?" The Zulu student looked confused and said, "We don't celebrate that." The American pressed on, "Oh. So you guys were on the side of the Pilgrims then?" She had absolutely no framework for a country's history that didn't revolve around her own, assuming every culture had to have a version of the Pilgrim Native American encounter. I was managing a bookstore in Montreal. A tourist from the US came to the counter with a copy of a famous Quebecois novel written in French. He asked, "Do you have this in the original language?" I was a bit confused and replied, "Sir, that is the original language." It was written in French. He looked down at the book, then back at me and said with a scoff, "Why would anyone do that? Don't they want people to actually read it? He should have written it in English if he wanted to be a real author." He then put the book down and walked out. A friend of mine is a park ranger in the Australian outback. He was leading a tour when an American tourist pointed at a group of kangaroos. "They're amazing," she said, "but why do you let them run loose like this? It seems dangerous." In our national parks in America, the bears and bison are in designated areas you can drive through. You should put up fences to keep the kangaroos in one spot for the tourists. The idea of fencing in the entire outback was so absurd, my friend just smiled and said, "We're working on it." I was at a public health clinic in a small town in Mexico as a volunteer. An American missionary couple came in and were lecturing the local mothers. I overheard the wife say, "You shouldn't let your children play outside in the dirt. It's unhygienic." In America, we have clean, sanitized playgrounds and hand sanitizer. That's why our children are healthier. A local doctor had to intervene and explain that exposure to the natural environment is crucial for building a strong immune system, and that hypersanitization is linked to allergies. I was on a flight from London to New York. An American man sitting next to me was complaining to the flight attendant because his screen wasn't showing the Super Bowl. The attendant politely explained that they didn't have the rights to broadcast the game live on an international flight. The man became indignant. This is an American airline flying to America. The Super Bowl is the biggest event on the planet. This is basically anti-American. I'm going to write a very strong letter about this. He genuinely believed the entire world stopped to watch his country's football final. While backpacking in Vietnam, I met an American who was complaining about the currency, the dong. "I just can't take it seriously," he said. "The bills have too many zeros, and the name sounds silly. Why don't they just use the dollar? It would make everything so much easier for us tourists, and it would probably help their economy too. It's a stable, respectable currency. They should be grateful for the suggestion." The level of entitlement to suggest an entire country change its currency for his convenience was staggering. I was working at a cafe in Copenhagen, Denmark. An American tourist ordered a coffee and a pastry and sat down. A few minutes later, he came back to the counter and asked where the free water station was. I explained that tap water wasn't self-serve and that if he wanted a glass, I could get him one. He replied, "No, I mean bottled water. In the States, you get free bottled water with any purchase at a place like this." I had to explain that free bottled water is absolutely not a thing here. He grumbled about how Denmark was a total rip-off. My sister was a tour guide at the ancient ruins of Ephesus in Turkey. After a long tour explaining the history of the Greek and Roman city, an American man asked her, "This is all very interesting, but where are the gift shops and restaurants?" A place this historic in America would have a Starbucks and a t-shirt stand right in the middle of the ruins. You're missing a huge business opportunity. He saw a priceless archaeological site, and his first thought was that it was poorly commercialized. I was in a pub in Scotland when a group of American tourists came in. One of them went to the bar and asked the bartender, "Which one of these scotches is the smoothest and has the least flavour?" "I want to do a shot, but I don't like the taste of alcohol." The bartender, a man who considered scotch to be a sacred liquid, looked at him with a deep, profound sadness and just poured him the cheapest blend without saying a word. The American did the shot, shuddered and said, "Wow, even your worst stuff is strong." I was on a bus in rural Peru. An American girl was looking out the window at the small adobe houses and the farmers working in the fields. She turned to her friend and said in a very loud voice, "It's so sad that these people have to live like this. It's like they're stuck in the past. When we get back to the hotel, I'm going to donate to a charity to help them get like real houses and office jobs." She saw a different way of life, not as a valid culture, but as a problem that needed to be fixed with American-style consumerism. I was working at a ski resort in British Columbia, Canada. An American guest came to the rental shop to get skis. We asked for his height and weight to set the bindings correctly. He gave his height in feet and inches and his weight in pounds. My colleague started converting it to metric. The American laughed and said, "You guys still use that fake metric system? I thought that was just a European thing. You're in North America. You should be using real measurements like us." My Canadian colleague just deadpanned, "We're the other 95% of the world. We think our measurements are pretty real." I was at a historical site in Normandy, France, related to the D-Day landings. An American tourist was talking to the French guide. He said, "You're welcome." The guide looked confused and asked, "For what, sir?" The American replied, "For World War II. We came over here and saved you all. The least you could do is have all the signs in English and accept US dollars. A little gratitude would go a long way." The guide, whose own grandfather had fought in the French resistance, was left completely speechless. I was in a restaurant in Seoul, South Korea. An American couple at the next table called the waiter over. The husband said, "My wife is allergic to spicy food. Can you bring us the non-spicy kimchi?" The waiter politely explained that kimchi is, by its very nature, a fermented and spiced dish. The wife then said, "Well, can you just make a fresh batch for us without the chili? We're willing to wait. In America, the chefs are happy to accommodate dietary needs." They could not comprehend that some dishes are culturally defined and cannot be stripped of their core ingredients. I was visiting the Acropolis in Athens. An American tourist was staring up at the Parthenon, and I heard him say to his son, "See, son? This is what happens when you don't pay your taxes. The government can't afford to finish the roof or fix the walls. It's a good lesson in fiscal responsibility." He genuinely believed he was looking at a modern, debt-ridden construction project, not a 2,500-year-old ruin that had survived wars and empires. I was working at a hotel in Iceland. A guest called down from his room in the middle of the night in January. He was furious. "Your advertisement promised me the northern lights, and I've been looking for hours, and there's nothing but clouds. I want a partial refund for false advertising." I had to explain to a grown man that we, the hotel staff, do not control the weather or the planet's magnetic field. He demanded to speak to a manager who could turn the lights on or clear the sky. I was on a safari in Tanzania. A woman from New York was in our jeep. Every time the guide pointed out an animal, a giraffe, a zebra, an elephant, she would say, "Oh, we have those at the Bronx Zoo. The ones at home are much bigger." She spent the entire trip comparing the wild, majestic animals of the Serengeti to their captive relatives in her home city, and finding the wild ones to be somehow less impressive. She even asked the guide if the lions were less aggressive than the ones at her zoo. I was in a cafe in Amsterdam. An American was trying to order a drink and said, "I'll have a water, no ice." The barista brought him a glass of still water. The American looked at it and said, "No, I wanted it cold." "Where's the ice?" The barista, confused, said, "You said no ice, sir." The American replied, "Right, I don't want frozen water in my water, but I expect the water itself to be refrigerated. Doesn't everyone refrigerate their water? This is just warm tap water. It's disgusting." I was at a train station in India. An American backpacker was arguing with a food vendor. The vendor was trying to give him his change, a few small rupee coins. The American was waving them away, saying, No, you can keep that. It's basically worthless. Just give me bills." The vendor kept insisting, but the American just laughed. "Dude, it's fine. It's like half a penny. Don't worry about it." He had no concept that this small amount of money could actually matter to the local vendor, and his dismissiveness was incredibly insulting. I was visiting a friend in a small town in Norway. We were in the local grocery store when an American tourist started complaining loudly that she couldn't find any ranch dressing. She stopped an employee and asked, "Where do you keep the ranch?" The employee didn't know the word. The tourist got frustrated and said, "Ranch, for salads. It's the most popular dressing in the world. How can you be a grocery store and not have ranch? This is unbelievable." She then stormed out, as if the absence of her favourite condiment was a personal affront. I was at a wine tasting in the Bordeaux region of France. The sommelier was explaining the complex notes of a particular Grand Cru. After the explanation, an American in the group said, "It's okay, but I prefer the wine from Napa. It's sweeter and has a higher alcohol content. You can really feel it. This French stuff is a little subtle, you know? It's like they're afraid to go for a bold flavour." He was judging a world-renowned, centuries-old wine region based on whether it tasted like the high-alcohol fruit bombs he was used to. I was on a tour of a medieval castle in Germany. The guide was explaining the primitive toilet system, a hole in the floor that dropped down to the moat. An American tourist asked, "So where did they keep the toilet paper?" The guide explained that toilet paper wasn't invented yet. The tourist looked horrified and asked, "Not even like tissues or paper towels? So they were just unsanitary? That's so gross. I'm so glad I live in modern times." She couldn't fathom a world without mass-produced paper products. I was working at a tourist information centre in Queenstown, New Zealand. An American couple came in and asked for a map to Middle-earth. I thought they were joking and started to show them the locations for the Lord of the Rings films. The wife cut me off. "No, we don't want to see the movie sets. We want to go to the real Middle-earth. We flew all this way to see hobbits and elves. Where do they live?" They genuinely believed that Middle-earth was a real hidden part of New Zealand. I was in a hospital in Thailand for a minor issue. In the waiting room, an American was yelling at the receptionist, "I have been waiting for 15 minutes. This is unacceptable. I have American insurance, the best in the world. I should be first. My time is valuable. In the US, I would be in a room already." He couldn't grasp that his expensive insurance meant nothing here, and that in a public health system, people are triaged based on medical need, not the size of their wallet. I was at a beach resort in the Caribbean. An American guest was complaining to the manager that the sand was too sandy and was getting into his belongings. He then complained that the ocean was too salty and it stung his eyes. He finished by asking if there was a way to turn down the sound of the waves at night, because it was keeping him awake. He was at a tropical beach, complaining about the existence of sand, salt water and waves. I was on a flight to Rome, and the Italian-American man next to me was proudly telling me he was 100% Italian and was visiting his ancestral homeland for the first time. When the flight attendant offered him a drink, he asked for a latte. She brought him a glass of steamed milk, which is what latte means in Italian. He looked at it in disgust and said, "This isn't a latte. Where's the coffee?" My God, you people can't even get your own drinks right. It's embarrassing.